Hi everyone, this is Vijayan from MuleSoft's product team. In this video, I will show you how you can build an inbound EDI purchase order to a custom JSON purchase order data transformation using MuleSoft's DataWeave from scratch. Our requirement is to take the EDI 4060-850 purchase order data on the left and transform it into a custom JSON purchase order structure defined on the right side. The JSON data contains a header section including information such as the sender ID, receiver ID, and the EDI control number, and a purchase order section that contains the PO header information like the order number, contract number, purchase order date, a reference loop, the ship to location of the order, and an array of purchase order line items. All of these information are mapped from various different segments and data elements in the EDI data. For example, so we have BG03, which is the PO number that is mapped to the business key field, as well as the PO number field. And similarly, we have other data fields that are mapped. We will see how this can all be done in DataWeave using the graphical data mapping experiences. Okay, let's jump right into Anypoint Studio and start building this mapping out. So in Anypoint Studio, I'm going to first go and create a new Mule project, and I'm going to call it EDI mapping purchase order. I'm going to use the default options that I'm provided with. All right, the project is now created. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drag and drop the HTTP listener so that I can test this map locally for various different scenarios, and I can also build some test automation to make sure the mapping that we are building is producing the output that we expect in the varying mapping specifications and input data formats. So I'm going to create a configuration for the HTTP listener. I'm going to just leave everything as is. I'm going to add a path so that I can post our sample data into the appropriate path. Okay, so now the HTTP listener is ready. The next step is I'm going to add an X12 read operation. If you don't see this in your Mule palette, you can click try looking for it in Exchange and add X12 connector to your Anypoint Studio instance. So I'm going to drag and drop the X12 read operation into my project. I will create a configuration for it. I'm going to rename the configuration to state that this is for an X12 4060-850 read operation. So the important thing that we need to do here is to edit the schema definition and include the specification for our 4060-850 document. Add the path to the EDI schema language file that the connector automatically provides. I'm also going to turn off the duplicate control number checks here so that I can use the same data for my testing without increasing the control number while I'm in the development mode. So now the connector configuration is completed. I'm going to now add our JSON message as a sample data here into this project. So I'm going to copy our output JSON message. I'm going to add it to the source main resources folder so that we can use it to define our target message structure. I'm going to drag and drop the transform component. What you will see here is as you added the data transformation component, on the left side, you already see the structure of your EDI 4060-850 message, and you can expand the various different sections to drill into the different data fields and data elements. That is automatically rendered as you have defined the EDI X12 version and the document type, which is 4060-850 in our example. So I'm going to save my project. And now our next step is to define the metadata of our target. So I'm going to click create metadata. I'm going to call it PO JSON. And I'm going to select JSON as the message type. As you can see here, there are multiple other options that you can map to as well. And you can create a metadata type definition using a schema or an example. I'm going to use the example option. And I'm going to select the JSON purchase order output data that we added to the project a while ago. I'm going to click select. And now the data transformation canvas is ready for us to start mapping the data from the EDI 4060-850 structure into the custom JSON message structure on the right side. So let me start off by adding a few fields and see what the experience looks like. So I'm going to add the GSO2, which is the application sender code. So the tooltip provides an easily understandable view of each of these EDI data elements. So I'm going to drag and drop the GSO2 into the sender ID field in our B2B message header section. I'm going to drag and drop the GSO3 here. If you look at our mapping requirement, we see that the message ID field is a combination of the interchange control number, the group control number, and the transaction set control number. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first drag and drop the interchange control number, which is the ISA 13, into the message ID field. And now, since our requirement involves a concatenation with a delimiter character between those different control numbers, so let's now add the GS control number, which is the GS06. As you drag and drop this, DataWeave automatically adds the concatenation logic without you having to write any piece of code. But since our requirement is to add a hyphen between each of these values, I'm going to manually add a hyphen and then concatenate the group control number. Okay, and now the next step is to add the ST control number, which is the ST02, and I'm going to add it as well. And you will see that that gets added at the end of our mapping. So I'm going to add a hyphen in front of that as well. And if we go back to our mapping requirement, we have a transmission ID. This is a UU ID that needs to be generated as the data transmission happens. So to map an unique identifier into the transmission ID field, I'm going to take advantage of the built-in functions provided by MuleSoft's DataWeave. So we're going to go into Browse Functions, where I can see a number of different functions and operators that the platform offers out of the box. I'm going to click UUID, which generates a unique identifier into that field that it is being mapped to. And I'm going to click Insert to add the UUID into my output. So and also for any fields that are already mapped, you can right click to quickly apply a lot of these string operators and other functions to produce the output that your mapping specifications require. There are also fields for individually mapping the interchange group and transaction control numbers. So let's go and drag our ISA 13 into the EDI interchange control number. I'm going to go to the group and map the GS06, which is the group control number, into the corresponding data field. And then I'll map the ST02 into the transaction set control number. And if you look at our mapping requirement, this is a hard-coded value. So I can simply double-click the field that I want to set a hard-coded value, and I'm pasting our requirement. And if you look at business key as an example, this is the purchase order number that comes from the BEG03 segment. So I'm going to go into the heading section of our EDI data and expand the BEG segment. And if I hover over the mouse on BEG03, I can see this is the purchase order number. So I want to map it to the business key field. We have mapped all of the elements in the header section. I'm going to save. And before we get into the mapping of all the remaining data fields, and let's see what this produces. So before I do that, I'm going to drag and drop a logger component. This can be helpful for troubleshooting purposes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just print the payload of the X12 read component as a JSON message. So this is again like you're not writing any specific data transmission or anything. It's just to see what the X12 reads output looks like, so that this can be helpful when we are troubleshooting. And this can also be helpful for us to leverage the data preview capabilities that is available in DataWeave. We'll see how it helps in a moment. And I'm going to run this project so that I can test what we have built so far in the mapping of the B2B message header section. All right, so the project is deployed and the HTTP listener is active now to receive data from any external source. So I'm going to go to Postman, where I am calling this endpoint. So if you remember, this is the path that we have put in the HTTP listener. And I have this sample 850 purchase order from of version 4016. So I'm going to go and click send. So now we see that the header section is now produced exactly as we would have expected, with all the sender ID, receiver ID, message ID, and other fields that we have mapped so far in the DataWeave transformation. So let's go into Anypoint Studio, where we can see that the logger component has printed what the X12 read operations output was. Again, this is something that is an inherent capability of the X12 connector itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this content and use it as our sample data to leverage the data transformation preview capabilities. So I'm going to stop the project for now so that we can work on the remaining part of our mapping exercise. So what I'm going to go is I'm going to right click the payload and I'm going to edit the sample data. I'm going to paste that data corresponding to our example EDI input that was automatically generated by the connector without us having to write any transformation or anything. So now once you have that sample data put in, now you will notice that as you expand various different segments and data elements, you will see that in addition to the context of your EDI message structure, you also get to see what that input data feeds into that canvas. So this makes it very easy to do the rest of the mapping in a very quick time. So let's now go and start mapping content into the data section of our output JSON message. Let's go into the heading section, which contains the purchase order header information. So I'm going to, this is our purchase order purpose code. So I'm going to map it. And I'm going to click preview here because we are now able to see the output that the mapping that we are doing is producing. So you see that all of the header section and also the one field, the purchase order purpose field that we just mapped in. And I'm going to map the type code into the PO type field. And as those mappings happen, you see that the output is dynamically changing to show us what the map is going to eventually produce. So this makes it easier for developers to understand what the output is going to look like so they can make any corrections as needed at design time. I'm going to map the BEG03 into the purchase order number field. And I'm going to map the BEG05 into the PO date field. And you will see that this is producing a date in the datetime format. But if you look at our actual mapping specification, we want the date to be presented in a specific date format. So DataWeave offers a lot of built-in functionalities to play with the date and time formats. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this input as a date time value. And I'm mapping it into a string. And now I'm going to format the date in the required format. As we do that, we can see what that output is going to look like. So if I probably want it to be using a slash, I can make those changes and I can see those reflected in our preview. So I'll switch back to the hyphen. And we have successfully mapped the PO date field here. And here BEG06 is the contract number in the input. And we have a contract number field and I'm going to map it. So we see that mapping happening in real time. The next step is there is a customer ID and the requirement is to map the GS02 as the customer ID. And we are using the same as the customer name as well here according to our specification and requirement. So now we're going to get into the next section here, which is the reference section to map the references that are coming in the input data into the corresponding output fields. So here in this example, the reference loop in the EDI data is an array, and the references section in our JSON structure is also an array. So as I drag and drop the reference type from the EDI input to our JSON output, what you will see is DataWeave is automatically creating the looping logic to iterate through the array on the input to produce the array in the output JSON message. So this is possible with data sense, which is an inherent feature of MuleSoft platform that understands the schematic structure of your input and output and dynamically produces the looping logic without you having to write any piece of code for that. So now if I drag and drop the reference O2 from the input to the output, you will see that it is iterating from the looping logic that it created. And we see those data fields mapped exactly as we wanted in our mapping requirement. If we go back to our example, the next section is the order shipped to location. So this is where DataWeave's data filtering capabilities come in handy because our requirement here is to specifically map the N1 loop content where the N101 qualifier is ST, which stands for ship to. As you can see here in the input, we have another N1 loop with a qualifier SN, and we also have another N1 loop with a qualifier OB. We don't want those fields to be mapped into the ship to location, and it has to be a very specific filtering criteria. Before we apply the filtering logic, let's go and drag and drop our input values from the N1 loop. So let's go and find the N1 loop. So you can also make use of the search capabilities that are available here in the top to specifically look at a particular segment or a data field. And if I expand, so you will see the first instance of that N1 loop is what you see here. And our requirement is to map out the order ship to location object in our JSON output. So this is our location name. So I'm going to drag it and drop it here. And this is the location identifier. And I'm going to drag and drop it here. So now at this time, because we are actually essentially mapping an array into this object, what you will see the output produced is basically you see all of the location names from the 3 N1 loops that we have in this section. But our requirement is to only map the N1 loop content where the qualifier is ST. So here we want the ship to location name to be exactly the Home Depot store number 589. So I'm going to go back into the data transformation script. So you can still do the drag and drop style mapping, but then since our requirement involves mapping a specific value from a specific instance of the N1 loop, I'm going to add a filtering criteria. So the question mark essentially applies the filtering logic. So as you type in the operator $, you get to see the available content under that particular section that you are operating with. So I'm going to select 3100 N1. As you type in, you are automatically provided with auto completion capability. So I'm going to select N101, and I want the mapping to apply when the N101 is ST. So this is where you put in the criteria for your mapping. So now if you see this section, now all the other location names have gone because we have applied the filter to only map when the criteria matches ST. And since it is still a loop on the input, you see this coming within a square bracket. So I'm going to add an index of 0 so that we are mapping the N1 loop content where the condition is N101 being ST, and I want to map the first match of that condition. So now if I scroll down, I see the ship to location name is now correctly mapped to that particular N1 location code where the N101 qualifier is ST for ship to. I'm going to copy this same condition. I'm going to add it to the location code as well. Now we will see that the location code is empty because our N1 loop where the for ship to does not have a location code, and it is okay. And even our requirement here is there is no ship to location code to be mapped. So we're going to essentially follow the same pattern to map the rest of the address information of our ship to location. So the address information comes from our N3 loop. So this is the street address. So I'm going to map the address information from N301 into the address line field. And as that happens, you see this is also essentially being mapped without any data. So to make it apply the correct filtering logic, I'm going to copy this condition on all the fields that we are going to be mapping so that the output is produced exactly as we would expect. So N3, for example, here is also an array. So I'm going to add an index so that we are specifically mapping the particular street information from the EDI data into the corresponding field, while also honoring the JSON schema definition that we have from the backend system that will receive this translated JSON message. So I'm going to map the city information, Dallas, into the city field. I'm going to complete this mapping out. And this is our postal code. And I'm mapping the country. So at this time, you will see everything being empty because we haven't applied the conditional logic. And there are arrays within arrays, making it produce the output like that. So I'm going to first apply the condition logic at the loop level for all these data fields. And you will see everything is actually presented as an array because all of these segments can repeat. And we are going to add the appropriate index for each of those segments so that we are mapping out the correct field information in the way we want the output to look like. So now we see the order shift to location is mapped with our expected filtering criteria, matching our mapping requirement. DataWeave also provides other capabilities such as writing custom functions if you want to externalize all of these filtering logics to apply by writing a custom get shift to location function that can be called in from different EDI data levels like your headers and your line items. But for the purpose of our demonstration, we are able to achieve what we need using these filtering capabilities. So next section is going to be the PO1 loop, which contains the item level details of the purchase order. So here the PO1 is a loop with a repeating array of your item numbers, quantities, unit price, and more. And on the output, we have PO line items defined as an array as well. So I'm going to go and first map the line item ID into the line ID field. What you will see in the output is DataWeave automatically senses the definition of your source and the target. And you will see that the line item loop is automatically built. All I did was just simply drag the line item ID field from PO101 into the purchase order line ID, and DataWeave automatically took care of writing the code for iterating through the different elements in the EDI data to the corresponding elements in the output JSON message. So from here on, I'm going to basically just drag and drop the mapping, and DataWeave and DataSense will automatically take care of writing the code for us. So I'm going to drag and drop this is our quantity field. I'm going to map it to the quantity field on the output. So you see that the mapping automatically gets created, and you will see the output also now has the fields that we have mapped. All right, so the next field that we want to map is the line number. And let's say we want to map it using the index of that PO1 loop that we are currently iterating through. So I'm going to right click line number, and I'm going to put the index of that loop, which basically will start from 0. So you will see that this is starting from 0 and 1. And we want it to be actually starting from 1. So I'll just simply add 1 to it. And you see that this is mapping to 1 and 2 here as expected. All right, so let's go and map the rest of the information from the line item loop. And we have this as the unit price. And here the input on the EDI side is a number. But if you notice, the unit price on our output is string. So when I drag and drop a number from the input to a string output in the JSON, you will see DataWeave automatically writes the typecasting to map the values as you would expect. So we see the same thing happening with the quantity, which is defined as a string in the JSON output for some reason. And when we drag and drop the PO1, O2, the typecasting was automatically added by DataWeave. And let's now map the item number from the PO109 into the supplier item number. So now this is mapped, and we see the supplier item number mapped as we would have expected. The only remaining data field is the item description. If you look at our input and output data of our requirement, we see that the item description here, it's a grill, pallet, grill, and smoker. There is some part of the item description is in the first PID segment, and then the color is in the second, and then there is some additional nodes. So, and if you look at our expected output, we actually want all of this information from the PID segment to be concatenated with a hyphen delimiter. So let's now go and map the corresponding item description from the PID loop. I'm going to find the PID segment here. So I'll make use of the search. And this is our PID, the item description in the PID 05. So I'm going to drag and drop the PID 05 into the item description. What we will see it producing is, because this is a repeating array, it is essentially producing an array as the output. But if we look at our requirement, we want all of these information to be joined together into a single string field that needs to be sent to the backend. So I'm going to go into the mapping logic. I'm going to make use of the join by function. And I'm going to add an space hyphen. So what this function does is, you will now see that suddenly what was shown as an array of multiple descriptions in a different repeating pattern is now concatenated with this as the delimiter. So we are able to produce the output that is exactly same as what our requirement is. So now at this point, as we can see here, we have mapped all of the data fields and elements from the EDI 4060 message structure directly from the EDI message, guided by the DataWeave's tooltip capability that makes it easier for developers to understand which fields are being mapped. And also we took advantage of the real-time data preview so that we can see what the produced output looks like without even leaving the design time experience, so that the developers can feel more confident that they have actually built a transformation that exactly matches the mapping specifications and requirements. So I'm going to save my project, and I'm going to rerun this project so that we can test it out from Postman. So I'm going to click save. I'm going to run this project. All right, so the project is now deployed, and our HTTP listener is ready to take any data input. So I'm going to clear our previous run where we tested only the header section. I'm going to rerun the same EDI data payload. And now we are seeing the output JSON purchase order message that matches our mapping requirements and specifications 100%. That concludes our demonstration, and we'll follow it up with additional use cases and examples to share how you can leverage MuleSoft's DataWeave to easily map EDI documents in and out with your internal data structures in any custom data format. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good rest of your day.